Well, this is where we left off. You may have noticed during the break, I emailed you this program. You have another test scores program in your folder for day one, and it's not this one. It's one that we'll look at later today, I believe. So anyway, I emailed you this one as well, and it's called Test Scores Slides, just so you have it. Okay, so a couple of points here. The use of comments, right? We have both inline comments down here, and we have block comments here and here. And again, you just create them using a hash symbol or a pound sign. And these are useful for the programmer who develops the program as well as for programmers who maintain the program later. And there's really not much more I can say about this. We talked about the implicit continuation. Okay, so let's start talking about functions at a basic level. And the basic syntax for calling any function, whether it's a Python native function or a function that you have created and saved, is this. You have to call the function name and the function arguments, and some functions you can run without any arguments, like print. Print, you can just say print, and you can have the two parentheses, and it will just throw a line. When there's something optional, in this case, the arguments, they're included in brackets. Okay, so the little brackets symbols here means that arguments can be optional. Print, again, the data, you can print as many things as you want that are separated by commas, and you'll find that if you call up print in help. This is one of those slides that I also have. This is day one, slide 19 in your folder. So let's take a look at what I put in there. And if we open that up, we will open and we drill down to that folder. Right, in scripts. It's in the scripts folder. I have scripts that I made from the slide by slide number, and this we're on slide 19, so we open up that one. And then again, this very simple little program. All it does is it prints out this string, right? Hello out there, and prints out a blank line, because again, the end argument has a default value of carriage return, \n, which means whatever comes after it printed out on the next line. And then it says goodbye. So you print that out, and that's all it does. Prints out hello out there, prints a blank line, prints goodbye. Notice when the program stops running, it's actually on the line below goodbye. And that again is because the default setting, whenever it executes a print statement, if you don't change the value of the end argument, it starts the next line on the line after. Okay, so functions, again, this course assumes you know little or nothing about programming, and I appreciate that many of you probably do. But a function is a group of statements that perform a specific task. Functions do things. Okay, and again, there are many built-in functions in Python, and we've used quite a few of them. In day, I forget, 2 or 3, we'll start building our own functions. The italicized words on these slides are ones that you have to supply. So you're required to give a function name, but the bracketed ones, again, are optional. If a function requires more than one argument, you separate them with commas. Here, let's do something. Well, we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so this is pretty simple. Okay, so here we're looking at the entire print function. And again, print function has an optional. No, data is not optional. Data is required, but it can be nothing. You can have nothing in there. What is optional is that you change the value of the separator argument. So the default separator is a blank, and you can change the value. What is optional? You can change the value, include this or not include this, change the value of the end argument. The default end is to throw a line. Okay, so let's see how this works and play around with this a little bit. So yes, sir.
Do you need the space after the comma? Is that a Python specific thing?
No, you don't.
You're just putting that in for readability.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, those spaces are Python. Mostly it just ignores spaces altogether, and especially in those instances. Okay, so let's take a look at this. This is slide 20. Right, so this will do exactly what the slide says. It'll print these values. Notice you can, and you'll get into this quickly, this second print function has two arguments. We're printing this string price, and then we're printing this value 19.99. Again, this space actually is irrelevant because the separator, the default separator argument is a space. So it'll put a space in between these, whether you put one in there or not, I think. So let's try this. Let's run this. So I'm going to save it. Right. So sure enough, even though I didn't include a space between these two arguments, it puts one in there. 1999, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's play around with this a little bit. You can change the values for the separator and end. So let's do that, right? So if I say print 1, 2, 3, 4 with no spaces, it prints out these 4 argument values, and it does include a space, and that's because the separator is a blank, the default separator. If I say print 1, and it's expecting the values, it is expecting the values to be printed, to be included and separated by commas in the first argument, like that, and then I want to put in a different value for separator. You can see down here that as I'm actually typing in values using the print function, it'll call up this little help screen, which is very useful. So you don't have to stop what you're doing and invoke help to figure these things out. Separator, as you can see, is a blank, right? And end is a line, and you have these other ones too that nobody ever uses. But if I change separator, right, I say separator equals, and separator needs to be a string variable. I can't just enter in, I'm not sure if that's true. Let's try this. Okay, so we say separator equals, and we will put a string in there. I'll say blank, put a bunch of weird symbols like that. Right, and then do this. I print that. You notice what happens. It prints the value of 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it is separated by all this junk. Now, another thing you can do, which is handy, at least in a Windows environment, I believe the command is Shift-Alt-P. If I say Shift-Alt-P, it pulls up the last command that I entered into the shell. If I continue to say Shift-Alt-P, it'll walk back through all the commands that I've entered. And so I can just edit that very simply. Instead of typing the whole thing in again, And let's see what happens if we change separator so that it's not a string. I believe we'll get an error. And by those red marks, I'm pretty sure we'll get an error. Okay, so separator has to be a string. You can't put a separator in there with just symbols. It has to be within a string. Okay, or what else can I do with this? Not a whole lot. Okay, so, but you can code the separator and the end arguments, and you won't need them in your early program, so you don't have to worry about that. Here, let's do one more thing. Okay, so if I say, let's do this. I'll say, no, let's not do that. We'll save that for later. Okay, so that's pretty much print, and you'll need to use print in your exercise for next week. Okay, so we're going to jazz it up a little bit here. And we're also going to introduce F strings with the print function. And this will be a little confusing. Yeah. Question. This might be a little confusing at first, but I guarantee that as you program more and more with Python, that you will want to use F strings to print stuff out. Okay, so let's call this one up. And this is slide 21. So if I open up that snippet, slide 21 here. So what are we doing here? Well, we're using input, and that simply will throw this prompt on the screen, and it will stop or pause until the user types in something on the keyboard and hits enter. And whatever the user types in on the keyboard and hits enter will be returned by input as a string variable, and it will instantiate this variable, the name of which I just made up, to the value that the user entered. Okay, but notice we're using a different format for the output of print. We're using a so-called F statement, or F print statement, as it's sometimes called. How is it different? Well, you put everything that you're going to output in one string, which starts here and ends here. You precede it with an F, and within this single string, you can mix both string variables with real variables. Here, let me improve on this a little bit. If, as an alternative, we did something like this: print, one way to format a print statement is, and we will do this. We'll use the traditional way. We'll say print we'll put a string in there, hello, comma, and then we will include the name of the variable. Okay, this is not an F statement, F print statement. We'll just say first name. This is the traditional way that you would use print. You could separate, you can put as many arguments as we want in there, but if I'm adding some string that provides content for the output, it's got to be within quotes, right?